Welcome to the OK Not OK podcast. I am the SportsZu, and today I'm going one-on-one with the game Triple H, and we see how well I did or how terribly I did with my Royal Rumble booking predictions. And I briefly do want to thank everyone that watched the Booking the 2025 Women's Royal Rumble from 1 to 30 video. That was by far the best one on this channel so far, and I'm not exactly sure why the men's one didn't do nearly as well, but I hope that everyone who watched is back for some more. So at the end of this video, I will grade both myself and the game for how well we both did in booking the Royal Rumble. And let's get this started with a spoiler alert. I mostly did terribly and way worse than I thought I would. That doesn't mean I did a worse job than the actual Royal Rumbles, because my ideas were, of course, far superior. So let's get it started with the winners, and I was 0-2. So first, Charlotte was the betting favorite at -200, and she won. And I guess if Becky was truly not available, this was a good call. Now, admittedly, I've had Becky for the Women's Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania anyways, so this does make sense for Charlotte versus Tiffy. That, of course, will be a good match at WrestleMania, assuming that is indeed what we get. But why would WWE not want to make Charlotte a surprise return? Of course, Trish, Alexa, and Nikki were all great surprises, but Charlotte would have been even better. But because we didn't get Charlotte as a surprise, I thought for sure we were getting Becky back. But of course, I was just completely wrong there. Then for the men, there's Jey Uso. He had the 7th best odds at +2,500. And going down the list of favorites, we had John Cena, Seth Rollins, CM Punk, Roman Reigns, and The Rock, and even Logan Paul. Of course, there might have been a riot if we had gotten Logan Paul as the winner, but those first 5, definitely, they would have been better choices than Jey. Now behind Jey, we had Randy Orton, Sami Zayn, Drew McIntyre, and Jacob Fatu. Now Zayn, of course, was probably there for a KO winning bet in that Undisputed WWE ladder match, and Fatu probably would have been too soon. But if Orton or McIntyre had won, that probably would have been completely fine for most of the WWE universe. So by my count, that makes 7 better choices than main event Jey Uso. Now, I don't want to disparage Jey because he is a Hall of Famer and has done a lot of amazing things, but right now he's 90% entrance, which is surely amazing when you're there in person, but it just goes too long every single time now when you're not. So yeah, I don't like this call at all. I literally had him out before entrant number 18, and that meant I had him in 19th place for this Royal Rumble. So enough said there. Unfortunately, it looks like this is going to be a win for the kids at WrestleMania. So let's go from the winners to the Final Fours. Now, surprisingly, neither match had a Final Four regroup, where all 4 final competitors do that look at each other and take a moment and stop before they start fighting again. So nonetheless, I had a Final Four of Jade Cargill, Nia Jax, Charlotte Flair, and Becky Lynch. But the actual Final Four ended up being Nikki Bella, Nia Jax, Roxanne Perez, and Charlotte Flair. And I have to say that Nia felt like a perfect 3rd place finisher, because obviously she can eliminate anyone at any single time, but I don't think anyone really thought she was going to win, so that might have been a little bit of a letdown if she had gotten to the final 2. Now for Roxanne to go from number 3 all the way to 2nd place, wow, I think that makes her pretty much a surefire call-up, which is not particularly surprising, but I don't think anyone actually thought Roxanne could win this thing, so that was also a bummer to kind of give this one away. And Nikki Bella getting 4th instead of Jade, that's just kind of whatever. If Jade was not actually available, which seems to be the case, Nikki's perfectly fine there. Now for the men, what we actually got was CM Punk, Logan Paul, John Cena, and Jey Uso. But I had Randy Orton, John Cena, Roman Reigns, and CM Punk. And I think CM Punk and John Cena in that Final Four was pretty obvious. Even though Punk didn't really get to shine there, he surely got those eliminations of Rollins and Reigns. But again, there was no real stare down, so he didn't really get to celebrate that with that extra moment. Well, I guess at the end of the day, the WWE simply believes in Logan Paul and Jey Uso way more than me, especially with Paul getting that coveted number 30 spot, and then 3rd place is pretty telling that big things are coming for him at some point in the very near future. So after those two things, let's get to the meat of the video here and talk about my overall picks from 1 to 30. And here's the spoiler: for the women, I got 24 out of 30, and for the men, I got 23 out of 30. And I personally think that is pretty sad, especially because I had an extra week to see the lay of the land for the men, and I thought I could get at least 25 for both of these, and was really hoping for 27, so at the end of the day, I was way off. Well, nonetheless, let's talk about a couple positives. I did have 4 overall perfect picks. One for the women, that was Julia at number 28, because I thought they'd want to put the champ in NXT in a prime spot, and sure enough, they did. And then for the men, I had 3 of them perfect. First, Drew McIntyre at 17, because I thought he was a top guy who wasn't going to win, so I thought they could at least use him to take out several others to clear some room, but I got the pick number right, but I was wrong about that because he somehow had 0 eliminations. That just doesn't seem like a good use of Drew McIntyre to me. But my best call out of everything was nailing Rey Mysterio at number 1 and Penta at number 2. And I thought this was by far the best way to start the Rumble, to get those 2 luchadors going and to see Penta's full entrance, and sure enough, it happened. So Cero Miedo, way cooler than your okay there, Doc. So yeah, I was really excited for Rey and Penta to start this. Now obviously it is very difficult to nail these numbers exactly. It's just more important that you're kind of just in the range of where everyone is. So that just kind of gets you to see where WWE is on their wavelength versus my particular thoughts. And actually I'm pretty pleased with how it worked out, because I had 13 women's picks within 5 spots of their actual appearance, and that includes 7 within 2 spots. I think that is an incredible outing there. Now for the men, I was a little less accurate with 9 within 5 spots, but still 6 within 2 spots. And I do want to say 5 is a relatively arbitrary number here, and I had exactly 4 additional men that were 6 spots away. So if we just simply make it a 6-spot range, I had 15 within 6 spots. So next, let's break down the hits and misses of each Royal Rumble. Again, for the women, I got 24 out of 30. So let's first start with the main roster, and we'll break these down into 3 categories. First, the current active superstars, then the current injured superstars, and lastly, the current returnee superstars. In the current active category, I predicted 20 women, and there were actually 21 women. So Maxine Dupree was included when I didn't think she would, though I have to say I thought she had a pretty good chance of being included, because she of course does pretty good work with the Alpha Academy, but of course that is not for being known for her in-ring capabilities. But perhaps she was only in there because of the current injured superstars, and I actually predicted 3 current injured superstars to now make a return, but unfortunately, none of them did. And that one really stings, but I think I get a little bit of a pass here because the women's video came out on January 23rd, and Dakota Kai wrestled on January 20th, so I don't think you can fault me for that one. Also, I didn't think her Damage Control partner, Kairi Sane, would actually need to be out longer, but I guess I was clearly wrong there. Now I am certainly shocked that Jade Cargill is not back, because we've had reports of her working out at the Performance Center for weeks. So I didn't think there was actually anything wrong with her, so this whole storyline is on hold until she's back. So I really thought this was going to get started, and I am very disappointed that it did not. Now for the current returnees, I predicted one, and there was actually one. I just unfortunately picked the wrong one, because things were not looking good for Alexa Bliss when I put out the video on the 23rd, so I don't feel too badly about missing that. But of course, I am ecstatic that she's back. I am, however, truly stunned that Becky Lynch is not back. Even if she didn't get booked to win the Rumble, it seemed like a perfect place to have her return. And as I said earlier, with Charlotte getting those vignettes, I really thought that meant Becky was going to be the big surprise. And of course, I was completely wrong. So let's move away from the main roster, and those 3 injuries left 2 open spots for NXT. And I predicted 3 NXT superstars, but we actually got a whopping 5 of them. Wow. And even of the 3 that I picked, I missed one of those because, of course, Cora Jade did not appear. I suppose they didn't want her to interact with Roxanne in this match, with them now being not quite on the same page anymore. But Cora debuted all the way back in 2021, so it's not like she hasn't earned it at this point. Instead, we got Jada Parker, Lash Legend, and Stephanie Vaquer. Now, Lash and Stephanie were clear considerations here, but in the last 3 Rumbles, we had 0, 3, and 2 NXT women, so I thought 3 women was clearly going to be the max. And then Jada was not even on my bingo card at all, so I'll take that as a complete miss by me there. Now for the TNA roster, I predicted that there would be 1, but there were actually 0. With the new partnership with WWE and TNA, I thought for sure we would get 1 in each match, so I thought it made sense for Masha Slamovich to be an easy call here, but apparently that was the wrong call, and Masha was the prime reason for me to also include Cora due to their actual feud that was happening at the moment. Now getting that one wrong, I suppose, cost me 2 wrong with both Masha and Cora. And I have to say I probably would have taken Stephanie over Cora with the 3rd choice if Masha weren't included. The next category is WWE debut. I predicted 1, and indeed there was actually 1 because the former TNA star Jordynne Grace was basically a lock by the time of the Rumble. But a week earlier when I did the video, not nearly as much, so I am pretty happy to get this one. And in the last category, the WWE Legend category, I predicted 1, there were actually 2. Now Trish Stratus picks seemed to be pretty savvy by me. We pointed out that she had an autograph signing, and not being in the Rumble since 2018, it seemed like a really good time to bring her back. So I was a little surprised she hadn't been talked about quite that much at the time. Now the Nikki Bella pick, or lack thereof by me, really hurts because of course she was there at the Netflix premiere of Raw, and I actually had her in my very first list, but then I changed my mind when I didn't want to include both her and Brie. But of course it turned out we didn't need Brie because Nikki can do things by herself, which she did by showing up by herself to that Netflix premiere, so I guess I should have kept her in the match. Now I do assume that WWE would have had Kairi, Dakota, and Jade, as well as Becky in there if they really could have had the bid, so I feel confident that I would have gotten 28 out of 30 as the true number correct, with just Alexa and Nikki being in for Cora and Masha. Still, Becky and Jade are big misses, so I'm giving myself a B-. So now I have to turn it to Triple H and give my grade for the WWE's choice of 30, and even assuming that Becky and Jade were completely unavailable here, I'm still giving them a C- because they should have used Carter and Chance, or Fire and Dawn over Jada and Lash, and I still think excluding Masha and by extension Cora were also mistakes. So now let's review the men's roster, and as I said, I got 23 out of 30 overall correct. First, for the main roster, current active stars, I predicted 26, and there were actually 27. Now, I included Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods, Solo Sikoa, and R-Truth. Instead, we got Sheamus, Braun Strowman, The Miz, Santos Escobar, and Otis. Now, I really want to talk about the ones I picked first here. The New Day actually has something going on TV, so it's pretty shocking that they didn't want to keep that going in some form or capacity, especially with Kofi just 2 Rumbles away from Kane's record of 18 Rumble appearances. Conversely, The Miz is now tied with Kofi with 16, and he just switched over to SmackDown, so he doesn't really have anything going on yet, at least until the Wyatt Six show up. Now, it seems to me that R-Truth definitely would have been the best bet for a comedy spot, and indeed, he was actually on the SmackDown the night before the Royal Rumble for unknown reasons, but instead, Otis was the one that kind of got to fill that role, but admittedly he was mostly just used to catch iShow speed. And for me, the Royal Rumble seemed like a great time for us to see what would be next for Solo Sikoa, but I guess the WWE did not agree with that, because instead we had Santos Escobar, who has had 1 match since August, which in itself was over 2 months ago, so I really don't know why they thought he needed to be included right now. And lastly, I thought my reasoning to exclude Sheamus and Braun Strowman was pretty sound, because they had both just lost on Saturday night's main event, so that could have served as their Royal Rumble, but nope, apparently WWE just said, these guys are just perfectly fine 1 week after those tough losses that they had, so we're gonna throw them on here even though they really don't have a chance. Then for the current injured superstars, I predicted 1 return, and we actually got 1 return. But for the second time today, I picked the wrong return, because I thought Randy Orton should return here. He, of course, is not actually injured, and I thought we would get a huge crowd pop to see him come back, because he's such a big star that even though it might not necessarily make the most sense for him to return and not get involved with that Cody Rhodes Kevin Owens story, well, he's just that amazing that it just should be happening anyways. And as the story was going down, Sami Zayn made more sense to interact with KO than Orton at this exact moment, so that cleared the way for Orton to join this Rumble. But I guess not to be, because that wasn't what WWE thought. Now, of course, AJ Styles was actually injured, and we did get reports that he was going to be in Indy, but he hadn't yet been cleared as of the time of me making that video. Nonetheless, I didn't think it was worth the risk to include him, but I have to say I was certainly tempted to do so, but had to make the cut somewhere, so I went with the safe call, but it was the wrong one. And in the last main roster category, we have the current returnees. I predicted 1, and we got 0. And as I said last week, I had Braun Strowman in and Omos out, but Omos having actual news where he actually dropped the belt in Japan and actually came home, and I thought that would have been actually enough for WWE to put him in the match, considering that's the only time they actually like to use him. Well, no, none of that mattered, and Braun Strowman even got completely destroyed by Jacob Fatu the week before, so it would have been really understandable to not include him here. But I guess if you're not going that route and Strowman's perfectly fine, Strowman is obviously far superior to Omos, so I guess I should have stuck with my original plan to include Strowman, but at the end of the day, I was the one that got duped, but it's really a tough look for Omos. Now in the NXT category, I predicted 1, we actually got 0, and I guess I have to say that I was the one that got whooped here, because last year we had both Carmelo Hayes and Braun Breaker making an appearance, so I thought at least Trick Williams made a lot of sense for a follow-up to that. And I have to say, I'm not mad about it. I'd rather see the main roster stars be in the Rumble because that means the NXT guys can be in there in the future, so use the guys that you've actually got. So that's perfectly cool by me, but I am pretty stunned by missing this one. In our TNA category, I predicted one, and of course, we got one. And yeah, you just had to include Joe Hendry with the new WWE TNA partnership. There was just no doubt about that, and I don't need to give any belief puns this time around, so we'll just be happy we got it and move along. And in the next category, we have our WWE Legends. I predicted 0. We actually got 0, and I suppose this is where The Rock would have been included here, but I lost complete faith in him at the Netflix premiere of Raw, so we simply had no space this year for anybody else, so it was The Rock or nothing, and it made sense that we got nothing. And in our last category is our celebrity category. I predicted 0, and we actually got 1. The WWE, I will give them their props. They pulled this off beautifully for I Show Speed, and I do have to feel badly for Akira Tozawa for being in the WWE for 8 years and having this be his first time of almost getting to be in the Rumble. But other than that, this was pretty brilliant by all involved. Now, of course, I assume if The Rock wanted to be in this match, he would have been in the match. And I also think that Strowman over Omos is obviously a right call, if at least you hadn't brought him back to the States right before that. But I guess that only takes up my true number 1 spot to 24 out of 30. The rest is just a matter of preference of whether you want to start stories in the Royal Rumble or just have some random dudes in there. Now, I would have gone for the former, but apparently WWE prefers to go with the latter. Now I'm giving myself bonus points for nailing the Ray Penta start, but at the end of the day, 23 out of 30 is just not good enough. Way too many misses. I'm giving myself just a mere C+. Now, Triple H and WWE bookers, man, oh man, oh man. I think the WWE picked the wrong injury return with Styles over Orton because Styles didn't even interact with Braun Breaker, who we then saw on Raw talk about him, so it seems that that would be the clear way to go, but Breaker was already out by the time AJ got in there, so terrible job there. We also got the wrong guy for the comedy act because Truth definitely would have been better than Otis because every time Truth is out there, it is pure gold. I do think leaving out the New Day was a complete tragedy over including Santos Escobar and then either The Miz or Sheamus. I am okay with leaving out Sikoa if you're not ready to go on to his WrestleMania story, but there's no doubt that would have been a lot more interesting than including the other of Miz or Sheamus. So at the end of the day, WWE, together with your ultimate choice of Jay as the winner, this Rumble was entertaining, so you did a pretty good job there. But as far as booking, with all of the talent involved here, and then what feels like a little bit of a squandering of it, you're just going to get a C. So there you have it, the Royal Rumble for 2025 is officially in the books, and yes, even with all those booking mistakes, it was still a lot of fun, but I hope that both I and the WWE can do better next year. And speaking of doing better, I sure hope that the Doc gets his head on straight soon after breaking the camera just 2 days ago, but I think you should still head on over here and check out who he thinks should be the next contender for each main roster title. And I am the SportsZu, and this has been the OK Not OK podcast.